that provides the solution. We are going to have to, all of us, deal with it on many fronts. The government of Ontario, about a little more than a year ago, set up what's called the Green Tide Action Working Group. I have a lot of hope that it will be this group that will formulate the comprehensive plan that will allow us to deal with the issue. And on that group, among others, are the co-chair is the police chief from Durham. There's a chief, the president of Ontario Association of Police, someone from Hydro One, electricity distributors, the Bankers Association, Credit Union, Insurance Bureau, Ontario Real Estate Association, Department of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, municipalities, Police Services Boards, Police Association, OPP, Toronto Fire Service, Electrical Safety, Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs, and the Ontario Building Officials Association. So my point is that we have to look comprehensively, and frankly, the real estate can be part of the solution. The last thing I'd say is that the province of Ontario has taken one step. When the minister introduced this, the Minister of Community Safety introduced it, he said, we recognize this is just one step, but we have a piece of legislation going through the legislature now. It's called Bill 128. It passed what we call second reading. It is now at committee for clause-by-clause review. In fact, Mike Delgrand, the councillor, made a presentation to that group. And it is one step that we, the province, are taking. Just so you know what's kind of the key elements of it, the legislation would allow an electricity distributor to disconnect hydro without notice for emergency safety or system reliability reasons. In other words, the electrical supplier could cut hydro off to a house where there was a strong suspicion of it being a grow-out. Would require building inspections of all homes that police confirm contained a grow-out. One of the feelings by municipalities is that their building inspectors need the authority to be able to get in and do an inspection where it's determined as a grow-out to make sure that the property is, if it's unsafe, it's deemed unsafe. We double the maximum penalties under what's called the Fire Protection Prevention Act for contravention. If, for example, if somebody wires up a house as a grow-out, contravenes the Fire and Prevention and Protection Act, the maximum penalties are doubled now. And we've set up what we call a special purpose account, so proceeds of grow-ops and other criminal activities can be spent on enforcement and crime prevention. Finally, the minister announced last week that we are proceeding with our commitment to fund half the cost of 1,000 more police officers across the province. And the expectation would be that a significant number of these would be dedicated to dealing with grow-ops. So there it is. A big problem. The solution is multifaceted. The real estate organization can play a role in that. And the province is moving forward on some legislation that we think will be part of the solution, including partially funding about half of an additional 1,000 police officers. So I look forward to the discussion and to suggestions that you might have on how you can help to deal with this significant problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. Actually, I'd like to mention at this time, in the event that you don't get all your questions answered today, these gentlemen are available, outside of this particular session. Get their business cards, get their phone numbers, and call them, and email them. To just say, that's what they need, more emails, right? The next person I'd like to introduce is the City Councillor for Ward 39, Mr. Mike Delgrand. Mike, did I say your name right?
I guess I won't say I'm going to sell my house. Everybody can come and give me my card. My message is going to be a little bit more blunt. As a professional, I'm a professional chartered accountant, and one of the very basics that I learned in my profession was either you regulate or you legislate. And as a chartered accountant, my profession wants to self-regulate. You are all business professionals in the profession of real estate. And as professionals, my message to you is, I hope that you self-regulate rather than being regulated and legislated. For ladies and gentlemen, you see, up to now, I was elected in December of 2003. I've closed my 47th marijuana grow house in my ward. 47. And I looked at the problem. I had the problem across the street from my house. I lived in my neighborhood since 1983, moving from East York to Scarborough. And I had one across the street from my own house. And you can imagine the surprise that the people that were operating this were operating across the street from the local councillor and next door to a police officer. Okay? So, with that in sight, I took whatever mechanisms that I had available to me, and that goes as follows. I post signs in the neighborhoods where a marijuana grow house has been busted. And we post a sign for 3 days to let the community at large know that this was a grow house, to let people know that sometimes these people come back to the same house. And so the posting is up for 3 days. So we let the community know, and I sent flyers around the neighborhood letting people know that we busted a grow house. Now the argument will be that's not very good for real estate. I'm going to tell you it is very good for real estate, because what it says to the people on that street in my community is our neighborhood is safer. We've got rid of another grow house up. And these things are not benign, okay? We had a gentleman in Scarborough not too long ago killed watching television with his son in his bedroom. We have had 2 instances in my neighborhood where the bad guys going to raid the other bad guy's house went to the wrong houses twice. Very scary. I've had 1 major fire in my neighborhood. And I've gone into numerous grow house where the landlord had no idea that this was taking place, and the amount of wiring and the amount of damage that's been caused to these houses has been absolutely enormous. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, I have a responsibility as much as you do. You should not be knowingly selling grow-op houses without rectification being done to these homes. I have, as a city councillor, ensured that there is a notation on the property so that any lawyer that is looking at the property, okay, the registration of the property, will see something from the City of Toronto, definitely in Ward 39, that there's something up that happened in this house. Ladies and gentlemen, it is no longer acceptable for me to hear from the real estate industry that we have no knowledge, that we don't know anything about this. You cannot sell a home to a family looking at their largest investment, buying a marijuana grow house, knowing that that house is contaminated. This is much greater than the urea formaldehyde issue that the real estate profession dealt with in disclosure clauses. You need to ensure, as a profession, as a self-regulating body, that you ensure that the vendor makes a statement that that is not or never has been a marijuana grow-op. You need to ensure that your buyer, who has children, are not buying into a house that is filled with mold and disease-causing mold that will affect families. We have gone to extreme length, as Jim has said. I want these things out of my neighborhood. They do not belong in neighborhoods. We will have Revenue Canada examine these homes. We will have MLS in the City of Toronto put the notation on the property. We will sign the properties in the City of Toronto. We will monitor these properties We will have MLS look after them and charge on their property taxes. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm personally convinced that this is primarily a landlord issue. Under the Landlord and Tenant Act, landlords have more power than I as the City of Toronto, than I as my MLS people have. Because the landlord can inspect their property within reasonable notice. And marijuana grow-ops cannot dismantle in reasonable notice. And if every landlord did that, inspected their properties instead of taking 12 post-dated checks, or as sometimes real estate agents do, act on behalf of overseas property owners, it is not acceptable to just take 12 checks and cash them at the bank and do nothing else to inspect the property. So as I said to you, I'm blunt. I don't mince words. This is not good for you as a profession. You do not want to be associated selling these types of properties to innocent victims. It tarnishes your reputation as well. So I implore you, I hope that we will get questions, that we'll be able to answer them, but I look forward to you as a profession. Please, be part of the solution, as Jerry Phillips has said. Be part of our task force, as Jim has said. Thank you very much.
Dan, please stand up. He's from the Toronto Drug Squad, and if you have any questions about the police, you can address him. The second person is somebody we all try to avoid. He's the Assistant Director representing Investigations Division of the Toronto East Tax Service Office. I hope you guys would never have any dealings with him. Mr. Val Rodriguez. Val. The last but definitely not the least is I would like to introduce Lisa Saburan. Lisa will be giving us a talk on the hangout we have put on the table. She's from the Drug Squad Crime Strategy, Organized Crime Strategy. She is from Ottawa. She is from the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services, the Policing Service Division. I guess they're the people who develop policies how to battle organized crime. So it'll be very interesting to hear what she has to say. Lisa?
Thank you very much. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here today to speak to you about the Green Tide Action Group. And I too would like to acknowledge and commend you for your interest in this issue and for your willingness to work in partnership to address this very significant and pervasive problem. I'd like to begin by providing you with a bit of background as to how the Green Tide Action Group came to be. In December of 2003, the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police released the Green Tide Report, which detailed the social and economic costs to the province of Ontario from marijuana grow operations. In 2002, there were estimated to be 15,000 grow-ops in Ontario. Some of the socioeconomic costs identified in the report were $100 million in financial losses to the province of Ontario in 2002 and $260 million from the period 2000 to 2003. 85% of these financial losses stem from the theft of electricity alone. Other costs include insurance costs, law enforcement, and justice system costs. Marijuana grow operations are characterized by increased violence, as indicated in part by the number of guns seized by police in raids, as well as homicide cases that have been linked to the marijuana trade. There is a 40 times greater risk of fire occurring in a marijuana grow-up as compared to a typical private dwelling. There are safety issues for first responders, primarily in the form of booby traps that are found in some grow-ops. plants. Health hazards exist from the presence of mold, chemicals that are used to foster plant growth, and increased levels of carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide. And as many as 10,000 children and their families may have been living in grow-ups from the period 2000 to 2003. The report also found that marijuana grow-ops are largely controlled by organized crime groups. And the vast majority of marijuana produced in grow-ups in Canada are exported to the United States and exchanged for hard drugs and guns, which all end up back on our streets. Following the release of the report, the Green Tide Summit was held in March of 2004, and for the first time ever, it brought together representatives from law enforcement, government, public utilities, and the private sector. Their goal was to examine issues such as the social and economic hazards of grow-ops, the significant involvement of organized crime, and the resulting negative impacts on our communities. The summit generated a great deal of momentum and fostered a strong sense of commitment from all of the groups involved. One of the themes that emerged from the discussions was the need for partnerships and communication channels between stakeholders and enforcement agencies, as well as a broad public education initiative, the creation and enforcement of harsher and more meaningful penalties, and the development of an action group to oversee and guide implementation of the solutions that were formulated. The delegates agreed that the summit was only a first step in an ongoing coordinated approach. And to maintain the momentum of the summit, the Green Tide Action Group was formed. The mandate of the Action Group is to work collectively to develop a coordinated action plan for each key sector involved, including finance, insurance, real estate, and public utilities. Each organization's members will consult with and represent their stakeholders on the Action Group and develop plans that will build on the Green Tide Summit recommendations. Once all the plans are finalized, then the group will coordinate their implementation. As mentioned, the Green Tide Action Group is co-chaired by the Assistant Deputy Minister of Policing Services Division at the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services and Chief Kevin McAlpine from Durham Regional Police Service. You have a list of some of the member organizations that sit on the Action Group, and as you can see, they represent a number of sectors, including the financial sector, public utilities, policing, real estate, fire services, etc. To date, the Action Group has accomplished the following: distribution of the proceedings from the Green Tide Summit. There have been presentations and discussions of both long-term and short-term action plans of each organization within their sectors. There's been extensive review and discussion on Bill 128 and its impact on stakeholders. And there's been the development of surveys and critical paths of stakeholder concerns and initiatives. And maybe I can speak at a very high level on some of the initiatives that are being spearheaded by the Ontario Real Estate Association, as tabled at our Green Tide Action Group meeting yesterday. The association is looking at including in agreements of purchase and sale a clause stipulating that the property has not been used for any illegal purpose or activity. They're also developing policies for the identification of buyers and sellers. They're developing and delivering training through the Real Estate Council of Ontario and the Ontario Real Estate College to increase the awareness of realtors. And they're publishing a brochure on marijuana grow operations based on that of the Durham Regional Police Service. Working groups have also been established to develop protocols addressing the notification by police of municipal building inspectors once a grow-up has been identified, as well as house entry protocols and procedures for first responders, and the investigation of grow-ops. One of the main objectives of the investigative protocol is to assist police in bringing to justice the heads of criminal organizations that are orchestrating marijuana grow-ops, as opposed to simply the individuals who are typically recruited to simply tend to the crops. Plans are also underway to construct a new training facility at the Ontario Police College that will house a simulated marijuana grow operation and a clandestine drug lab. And there is also additional police training on the operation and hazards of grow houses as well as synthetic drug labs. There's been some discussion about making that training available to not only police but to other affected stakeholders. Some of the current issues that the Green Tide Action Group is addressing are exploring the development of a province-wide database that would house information on all grow ops in the province that would be accessible not only to police but to other affected stakeholders such as realtors. The need for training and awareness for police and other stakeholders is an ongoing challenge, and we're also trying to ensure that we have current information on all of the stakeholder concerns, their sector action plans, and their critical paths. Some of the deliverables of the action group is working towards, that I haven't mentioned, are best practices to provide whatever guidance is necessary to the stakeholders to enable them to achieve their objectives. And we're looking at communication strategies within individual industries as well as more broadly within the public realm. Finally, it's our intention that the Green Tide Action Group will continue to facilitate meetings of stakeholders and coordinate the efforts of all of those groups involved in combating the problem of marijuana grow operations. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Lisa. Now that we all know the extension of the problem, we have to work together to try to find a solution. And to start it off, a dialogue between the community and all these responsible people here is the first step. So now I open the floor to questions. 我哋而家開始可以問問題。我哋有4個咪喺嗰度，每一個咪咧，我哋有個 volunteer 喺度做 monitor 嘅。Philippine 嗰度，因為冇 number 所以我咧輪流叫。Philippine 嗰度一個Stella Lee 喺邊度啊 ？Stella Lee 可以一個咪。
Is that a database now we can go in and download the list of grow houses?
Unfortunately, we're still just in the process of looking at how a database like that could be established and where it would be housed. We're in discussions right now with our RCMP counterparts as well to see whether it's something that can be done on a national level or whether it would be something that would just be specific to Ontario.
123 Steel Street. Is that if I go to municipal, should I go to municipal or should I go to that local police station? And how can I get the information from that point?
Their own database?
There's a quarterly letter that's put out by 42 Division. 42 primarily covers Victoria Park, north of the 401, all the way out to Pinker, and then it goes somewhere down Morningside, down that way. They have it, there's a newsletter that they publish, and certainly I think it's on the 42 website.
So you are saying that whatever have been butts in the 42 divisions,
That information is available.
Okay. Do you have any specific website or web address or?
If you go under the Police Services Board and you access 42 Division, I think it's on their website.
Okay.
And if it isn't, any one of us can certainly get you in touch with 42.
Okay, thank you.
17 that is going through the House of Commons, and Bill C-17 is where we are trying to think out of the box and decriminalize the use of personal use of marijuana. Any use of marijuana growing, any amount growing right now, you can get a maximum of 7 years. The proposal is, and it's, it gets even better. It gets even better. The proposal with the new legislation, and it's incremental, you can get up to 14 years for growing marijuana. I've been working with the minister and I've got a couple of personal proposals. Anything less than 3 plants, let it go. 3 to 20, 2 years. And my proposal and what I'm advocating for is, as long as if you have over 100 plants, automatic, minimum, mandatory 14 years. That will put a stop to it.
I don't want to steal any of the thunder, but the reality is we can have all the maximums in the world we want. We need to have minimum sentencing. The issue today is the marijuana grow-op business is a very lucrative business. Each house can produce approximately $1 million. 3 growing seasons in a house, $1,000 a plant. And when people are caught, they may get a fine, they may get a suspended sentence, they may get house arrest. So, from my perspective, there isn't a strong enough deterrent. If you did what's going on here in the United States, you would get 14 years. And you would get 14 years. You wouldn't get 2 for 1 or 3 for 1. You would get 14 years in jail. That is why it is more advantageous to grow it in Canada and ship it to the States than it is to grow it in the United States.
I'm glad that you've answered the questions. Do you have a follow-up? Maybe you can put it now, or is that all you got? Is that the whole thing?
I have more questions for you.
So why don't you put them all and then I can answer them directly?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like that you are an aspiring politician and you want to be at question period.
Yeah.
So being a long-time politician, I mean, I can see it coming. So why don't I let you finish all your questions and certainly I can answer, and I will answer this. The legislation that stands right now, Bill C-17, and is proposed, it goes through a process of, there's a lot of people that want to decriminalize marijuana, and this is for personal use. There's a lot of youngsters that are using marijuana as it stands today, get criminal records, and one of the areas that the government is looking at, and one of the proposals is, can we decriminalize personal use and come more heavy-handedness on the people that grow it up, and can we come a little bit more heavy on the people that are actually perpetrating the crime? That is something that the government has proposed. It is front of the committee. The committee will travel over the summer. As you can probably imagine, we were a little bit more preoccupied in order to do the work that you've asked us to and to make this minority government work. The committee will be traveling right across the country, taking proposals and talking to people. One of my recommendations is that we come a little bit more stronger with minimum sentencing. This is because of what we're facing in this particular neighborhood. A couple of my colleagues have applauded that. I've talked to the Minister of Justice. I've talked to the Minister of the Deputy Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, which is responsible for Canada Security Border Agency. And one of the things that we want to make sure, absolutely sure, without any hesitation, is that the people that are involved in this kind of activity, if the long arm of the law, be it provincial, be it municipal, or be it federal, doesn't get you, the Revenue Canada can get you. Let's not forget that Al Capone did not go to jail because of the criminal activities that he did. He went to jail for avoiding tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garagianis.
For you. The process of busting a marijuana grow-op is a long process requiring significant resources. You cannot go knock on a door and walk in and arrest somebody because they have a marijuana grow-op. It is very time-consuming. We do not have a dedicated marijuana grow-op squad per se in the city of Toronto. We have officers that are assigned to closing down marijuana grow-ops, but it is very time-consuming. Why is it that the local councillor and the member of parliament go around knocking doors, if you will? My friend Jim will say we're out canvassing, campaigning. I will tell you that over the last little while, I've been inundated with addresses, concerns, etc., etc. And part of my responsibility of keeping my neighborhood safe is to know what's going on in my neighborhood. And I want to tell you, when you ask most politicians, okay, I didn't inhale, I didn't exhale, I didn't test, I didn't try, okay, I didn't sell, I didn't buy. My mother and father taught me to be straight and narrow. So when we talk about decriminalization, yes, from my point of view, there is a mixed message. Where I'm coming from is these types of operations do not belong in residential areas. The debate of marijuana being decriminalized or not being decriminalized is not where I'm coming from. I'm coming from these things do not belong in residential communities operating out of those homes.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. I think we want to hear from Inspector Hayes.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd just like to take a moment to respond to the earlier comment or question. I'm not sure whether it was a comment or a question, but it was along the lines of why are the politicians out there doing what the police are supposed to be doing? And while I can understand why one would make that sort of remark, I would have to point out to you that it is a partnership, that we are all in this together. This is not just a matter for the police to deal with. It's a matter for all levels of government and all members of the community to deal with. And these gentlemen and ladies to my left are doing the responsible thing. They're involving themselves in the process of creating solutions. And if that means being aware of what's going on in their communities, in their wards, in their ridings, and reporting those activities to the police, then that's wonderful. But I can certainly assure you that by no means are the police sitting back and doing nothing. I can assure you that a significant amount of our police resources are directed at this problem of grow-ops. I speak on behalf of the Toronto Drug Squad, which has approximately 100 men and women dedicated to drug enforcement. And while I'm not going to stand here and tell you how many people...
Yeah, is that 100 men and women officers? Is that per division of the Toronto Police Force?
The 100 officers that I just mentioned are members of the Toronto Drug Squad, and our mandate is to oversee drug investigations throughout the entire city of Toronto. But in addition to that, every division has officers, both uniform officers in the community response units and officers in their major crime units, plainclothes officers, old-clothes officers, who are also working on the same issues in partnership with the drug squad. So we have a significant amount of our 7,000 people attacking this problem. The problem is, though, however, that the scale and the volume of the marijuana grow problem has out-resourced our ability to respond adequately. We are out-resourced by the volume. We're up against a system here in Canada that does not provide any meaningful deterrent to criminals who would be engaged in this high-profit, low-risk venture. And there was some discussion about the issue of sentencing in Bill C-17. And I would say to that, while I appreciate Mr. Karagiannis' support for minimum sentencing, unfortunately, that message is being lost between Toronto and Ottawa, and there is absolutely no initiative on the part of the federal government to initiate any sort of minimum sentencing for the grow-up problem. 7 years is the maximum sentence on the books right now. I would be extremely happy if we got anything near a 7-year sentence now. So why would creating a maximum sentence of 14 years have any effect on this issue is beyond me. That, I would suggest, is political posturing in Ottawa and is really just smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, I appreciate your telling us that the CREPSO, I believe, is according to...
One thing, I know this is a question and answer, but I wouldn't mind some feedback. One of the things that seems to make sense to me is that if a house or an apartment is busted as a grow-op, that legally the next owner should know that. And I wouldn't mind, because you are all experts in it. Is that a good idea? If it's not a good idea, why isn't it? But if we're all going to solve this problem, should we, the province, make it mandatory that if a house or an apartment has been busted as a grow-op, the next purchaser legally must know that? Is that a good idea? And so everybody says yes? Am I aware of any house being condemned and torn down? No. That piece of legislation I talked about before talks about the proceeds of crime going into a special fund. I'm not aware yet of any house that was sold as yet, and then that money being put into a special fund. I'm told it is possible under the legislation to do that. So I'm not sure that you'd want to tear a house down as much as say, is that something that could be used as the proceeds of crime to help fight the situation? So the answer is I'm not aware of anyone being torn down. I'm not aware of anyone yet being, because the legislation isn't passed. But I'm not. You're all business people. I'm not sure it's a good business case to tear it down rather than say, sell it. Well, sell it.
The reason I asked
Canada Revenue Agency is very interested in the criminal economy, and part of my mandate is to make sure that people involved in illegal activities are taxed. Most of them file returns, but we do work with law enforcement agencies, with them, and that's where we get most of our leads from, basically. And afterwards, we get through with them, we conducted audits. When they pay their taxes, penalties, and interest, money that they earn from illegal activities, the taxes are far more than the money that they earn from these illegal activities, basically. And
identify them. How do you identify them?
we get them from. Sure. We have 1-800 number, an informant line, which is 1-866-809-6741.
Take down this number.
Okay.
The snitch number.
But any criminal activities, I think we get involved with, better for you to call the local law enforcement agencies, and they'll supply us the financial information on these individuals, basically. But you're free to call our line anyway. All right?
Thank you, Bill.
Mode of operation, it's great to forfeiture, but most of these individuals rent. So that if the house is busted, it's the landlord who says, I don't know anything about this. I can tell you that the 47 busts that have occurred in my ward, they've all been rentals. So there hasn't been any ownership. And again, all the landlords say, so you cannot take that house away from somebody who claims they're innocent and doesn't know anything about it. The bad guys rent their cars and rent their houses. So there's no assets to take.
I will sort of give you a little story. On Kennedy Road, just south of Finch, on the west side, there's two houses for sale right next to each other. And both those houses were marijuana grow houses. And for those of you that want to drive down that Kennedy and sort of see the listing agent, I called the listing agent and I said, sir, were these houses marijuana grow houses? And the listing agent said to me, sir, I'll get back to you. To this day, he hasn't. So, the onus, as Jerry said, is not only on the politicians, on the police, on the Revenue Canada. The onus is on all of us. You as a professional, and a professional that has high ethics, because in your profession, I did the course many moons ago, about 29 years ago, you have standards and ethics. For me to wait for that individual to still get back to me, I can call up Trev and certainly report him in front of the ethics. But that's not something that I care to do. So we're here to work together. One of the things that overwhelmingly you said is that you want legislation that is in the offer versus leaving it up to shysters and people that sometimes want to avoid the situation. And this is what we're here to do. Disseminate information to let you know. One of the things that Grace said to me is, what about if there's bad apples among our industry? Certainly Revenue Canada will be more than delighted to hear of those bad apples. Because for somebody to buy a house and rent it out, don't go back in to see anything, and the bank to give them a mortgage, and maybe the bank hasn't crossed the T's and dot the I's. We're here with your help to make sure that we cross the T's and dot the I's, and we hold the people that are actually not asking professionally responsible.
Thank you,
You call
Jim.
the real estate agent and you ask him if that was a grow house. He is very honest, very straightforward, and he discloses that that was a grown house. I'm similar to the, I believe that you must be from the Coptic, are you from the Coptic religion?
Yes.
Are you a Coptic? And similar to the Coptic, to the grow house behind the church at St. Mark's, the real estate agent there certainly said, I don't know. So if you, the short and the term is, you don't know who's calling and what he knows, so be honest.
I can only speak on behalf of the Toronto Police Service, the area south of Steeles. Last year we dismantled 320 grow houses. This year we are trending towards a figure that will likely end up in excess of 400 grow houses. Our trend is about 18% increase so far this year. As for the use of the FLIR, the infrared, and the helicopter, in Toronto we do not have a helicopter. We do have a portable FLIR, a handheld FLIR unit that is of great value to us in our investigations, but as to the policy of using the FLIR in York region, north of Steeles, I couldn't really make any comment on that.
I pick up that thing.
I'm generally familiar with the case, but it was a York Region project, York Regional Police-led project, so it would not really be appropriate for me to make any comments about it.
Grant can answer it, but my understanding is that provided you give 24 hours notice, that an owner has the right to inspect their building, and it's but Mike may have had more experience recently with it, and I'd be happy to have him comment, but that's my understanding.
You probably wouldn't do that for $100. So if I'm an investor, and by the way, I used to buy houses and rent them a long time ago. If you have an investment of $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, and you've given that to a stranger, are you telling me that you wouldn't have an interest to know that your property and your building is structurally sound and everything's okay? When I was a landlord, I went and spoke to the neighbors on either side of the house that I was going to buy and across the street and introduced myself and said, I'm the guy that's buying the house across the street. If there's any problems, here's my phone number. And if there was a problem, I would get a phone call. I was being a good landlord. And you know, quiet of enjoyment is in the lease. But also in the lease is the right of the landlord to inspect their property. You won't give a stranger $100. Why would you give a stranger $500,000? You wouldn't check your property? You wouldn't be interested in $500,000, but you're interested in $100? That's what being responsible is all about. And as I said to you earlier, you cannot dismantle a grow-op in 24 hours. So, there is an obligation from my vantage point of the landlord to inspect their property on a periodic basis. And I believe firmly, being a landlord in the past, that when you do inspect, the tenants are on notice, that you can come by and give 24 hours notice, reasonable notice, to go and inspect your property. And if you can't get in to inspect your property, I'd say there's something wrong right there.
Yeah, that's a very good...
Let me sort of pull the meeting back into what we're here for. We're here to interact with you, to help us, one, make sure that the people that your clients, the vendor or the purchaser, certainly when they buy or sell a home, that they make full disclosure. Especially the purchaser, that when he buys a home, he knows or she knows what they're getting into. That's number one, paramount. We're here also to make sure that this profession has a pipeline to the police, to the local representatives, that we're able to provide you if, let's say, to Innislawn or whatever other street was a grow house. We're also here to make sure that, and also listen to your concerns about how we possibly legislate, possibly work with you in conjunction to make sure that in every offer that goes in, there is a built-in clause, and you don't have to type it, that this was not a grow house, and the landlord or the tenant does that. We're here also to make sure that when you as a real estate professional looks at renting a house to somebody else, what they should watch out for, what they shouldn't watch out for. And certainly there's been good discussion back and forth. So with that in mind, and keeping to that focus, what I would challenge you and ask you is, we as legislators, Jerry asked if we can put this clause in there, a mandatory clause that goes in. Is there anything else that you as professionals, that you as people that are on a daily basis selling homes, working with vendors, working with purchasers and sellers, is there anything else that we can do? Is there anything else that you can think about that we should be doing to legislate, to motivate, let's say to do a national data bank of grow houses that's been mentioned? Is there something else that we can do to make your life easier and certainly protect our citizens? If I can, I mean, we have about a couple of more minutes left. If I can sort of turn the tables around and say, okay, what's the challenge? What can you tell us that we haven't thought about? What have you tell us that we haven't done? What else can we do on a two-way street? So if that, if that can be thought about, or if you want to do it privately, that would be appreciative. I, as a legislator, a federal legislator, what can I do to help this honorable profession, to help my constituents, to help the people of Canada, to get rid of this menace that we have?
You as the, I guess the listing agent was the bad apple, but you as the agent that represents the...
I'm the good apple, yes.
No. Sorry, the listing agent at that point was a bad apple.
Right.
But you as the agent for the purchaser, did you go and ask the neighbors if that was a grow house?
Actually,
I'm not talking about you, but
Yeah,
you'd be surprised.
yeah.
No, you'd be surprised that if you go talk to the neighbors,
yes.
2 houses this side and 2 houses that side, the neighbors will tell you if the police were there.
Yeah. It's a good apple, that's what I exactly did.
Excellent. Well, there you go. But again, should we have a national data bank?
I think so.
Okay.
And we need to do it, not exploring. We need to do it immediately.
Okay.
Right.
Well said. Well said. But in the meantime, until we do it immediately, 42 Division, and I'm sure that Dan and Lisa certainly be able to, to at least try it out for the City of Toronto and then multiply it from there.
But what if that property is outside 42nd Division? We're helpless now.
Hey, I learned a long time charity starts at home. Sorry, I represent south of Steeles.
And let me share another
If I can get rid of the grow house, which is 5 doors away from my daughter's school, if I can get rid of the grow house, which is 100 yards away from my house, if I can have my neighborhood, our neighborhood, the 3 politicians that are here, our neighborhood, marijuana free.
Let me just share another experience. You see, one of my coworkers.
Say one thing I've taken from this meeting. It sounded to me like, without exception, this room would say you support the concept of making it mandatory to disclose to a purchaser this had been a grow-up.
Yes.
And nobody in the room disagrees with that.
Yes.
The second, in order to do that, obviously you need a database that determines that. Lisa, if you listened to her comments earlier, said, I'm not saying you didn't listen, but she did say that one of the things the Green Tide